So Virgo is taking over in our astrological sky, in our symbol set. Virgo becomes one of the major archetypes to explore because over the next month and a half, you have 2 new moons in Virgo. And that is rare. It doesn't happen very often where you would have 2 new moons or 2 full moons in the same sign. Every few years that happens. We get that here in 2025. And of course, the second of those new moons is an eclipse, a solar eclipse, the only solar eclipse in the Virgo eclipse cycle. And so Virgo is on the agenda. And we're going to do that in this video. We're going to explore a little bit of the archetype of Virgo to get us ready to engage that archetype. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics of the charts and some of the astrological syncopation as it relates to the planetary movement to get you prepared over the next 2 months. I mean, my job here is to lay out for my audience what I think are energetic activations or symbolic imperatives that will help you get through any period of time. And there's all kinds of different ways to do that. There's tons of astrologers on YouTube and everybody's got different approaches. We all give different accentuations and use different techniques. And for me, simply the technique of what zodiac sign has a lot of ping, that's a great way into any moment of astrological energy or so-called space weather, is what is that zodiac sign that has a lot of ping. And what I mean by that is important transits running through that zodiac sign. And that tells us, hey, let's contemplate that archetype because we're going to need to contemplate it as those planets move through their pinging, you might say, or their evocation of that archetype. And a perfect example is that currently we have Saturn and Neptune in Aries all summer. Neptune 30 March until October, it will enter Pisces. And then of course Saturn 25 May and to 1 September, it comes back to Pisces. So we've had this summer Aries activation and the archetype of Aries has been prominent. I've repeatedly talked on this channel about that archetype as a result, and I think it's helped us to think about Aries this summer. We've seen war as a major theme with the 2 main wars on our screens 24/7 and the destruction and the war crimes and the utter inhumane treatment of innocent people in Palestine, for example, and the crazy new ways that warfare has been deployed with these drone attacks. Of course, Age of Air is a part of that, but the point here is that war has been on the mind, front and center, major defining piece of the conversation. And you see that contemplating the Aries archetype to prepare for summer would have helped us to get out ahead of that. Like that was successful, we're going to come now into this Virgo archetype activation to get you ready and to get us all ready. I mean, part of using astrology is just getting psychically ready so that we can prepare and contemplate, and then we enter into those spaces of activation and we are a little bit more equipped. Sometimes it's not even at the level of the conscious intellect. It's just you might have downloaded information, listening to my video, and then that's in your psyche somehow. And so you're just psychically equipped at some level of depth, and then you'll be a little bit better off, I hope. Virgo archetype, what is it? How can we even determine what the Virgo archetype is? Well, there's a lot of writing on the zodiac signs all throughout history, right? People write about the signs and what they mean. My preferred method is to go back to the ancient texts, and I like to use my favorite astrologer increasingly is this guy Paul of Alexander, or we call him Paulus Alexandrinus. I love his book. There's a lot of unique stuff in Paul's book, and one of the parts of the book that I like is when he talks about the signs of the zodiac, he brings the planets in. And he brings a few different aspects of the zodiac signs in, but the planets are brought in, and he uses the domicile lord, the exaltation lord, and the 2 triplicity lords by day and night. And then what planet has fallen. And all of that goes into how to understand the zodiac sign plus other features, the element, the modality. And so let's just quickly run through some of that here, just at the outset, and then we're going to run through some of the timing. But so we know over Virgo, the domicile lord is Mercury and the exaltation lord is Mercury. Mercury rules by both domicile and exaltation, the only sign of the zodiac that features that unique framework of a planet being both the domicile and exaltation lord. So we know this is pure Mercury at one level, Virgo. It's pure mercurial. What is Mercury? Thinking, writing, analysis, playfulness, games, children, the two-facedness, the changing forms, the morphology. It is tricksterism, it is sometimes deceit and lies and checking the fine print and trying to kind of trick people with language. It is magic, it is astrology, it is a lot of stuff, law, the form of language as it applies to using words and paragraphs to convey ideas in detailed formation. It's poetry, right? In poetry, one comma changes the meaning. I'm just watching this movie. I know I talked about Dante Alighieri in one of my recent videos because I was reading that translation from Alistair Gray. But there's a new movie about Dante. It's called In the Hand of Dante by the painter, the great painter Julian Schnabel, who also directs cinema. His new film has been leaked online, and I've seen a few clips of it, but it's about Dante. I can't wait to watch it. But poetry, like in that film, the clip I saw, they were talking about the obsession with the form of stanzas of 3 lines and the rhyming stanzas, and how Dante lost himself and got obsessed with this particular form. But it's an example of Mercury, where you're counting meter and rhyme and you're so obsessively building out the high detail of a poetic expression that becomes mercurial, because it requires, this counting and the is it a rhyme, isn't it a rhyme. It's very technical. At one layer and at one level, just knowing that Mercury takes center stage, 2 new moons in Virgo, we've got to think about Mercury, you've got to think about your Mercury. So the first one's on the 23rd of August, the first new moon. Second one, which is the eclipse, is on the 21st of September. And they're in the first degree of Virgo and last degree of Virgo. This is why it happens when you have 2 new moons in the same sign. It's the first and the last degree get pinged, because you're starting at the very beginning with enough time to have another new moon at the very end. Those dates are then important, where the newness is refreshing around the Virgoan theme, but coming back, it's Mercury. You've got to, in my view, think about those matters, getting into your details. It's always relevant, always highly relevant. What are the details of your life? I've got a room here. It's relatively clean, but I have someone that comes to clean it sometimes for me because she's getting into the details of the cleaning, and that's very Virgo as well. But without doing cleaning into the details, there could be things that emerge here, like dirt that stays around, or festering, messes that risk hygienic problems in my space. So it's just an example of how there's the necessity to get into the details. And the beauty of the zodiac is every zodiac sign evokes symbolism that's highly relevant in our world. You can't remove a sign of the zodiac from the zodiac. The zodiac is a complete, hermetically sealed loop of meaning. Sometimes people say, well, I've got no planet in this sign in my chart, but you have that sign in your chart, and it's loudly active, every sign in everybody's chart. It's just a question of how you then read it when planets are in certain signs and not in others, and that's for another video. But we cover that on my Patreon. We're actually going to do a live stream this weekend dealing with rulership, which is the core feature of how we determine when you have an empty sign house, how do you delineate that? So we're going to cover some of that this weekend on my Patreon, just as an example, of what we're talking about over there. And just to say, so it's mercurial, getting into the details of your life over the next 6 weeks, okay guys? It is the earth element. I'm going to skip around here a little bit, but I'm talking about my home and cleaning the home. That's the earth element. It's the physical, tangible materiality that you're ensconced in. And so that's the other beauty of sinology, is that you have the elemental examination, which tells us some more parts of life that sign speaks to. And the earth element is very much about, what are you living in? And I come back to the apartment analogy, getting into the details of your materiality, whether that's your apartment, whether that's your financial side of life, budgeting. This is a great time to budget. Maybe you need to refresh some of your budgeting goals or your financial goals or your spending issues for the rest of the year. This would be a great 2 months to do that. It's Mercury, and it is the earth element. And so I'm going to layer in the other 2 planets that rule Virgo. And this is the beauty of the Paulus Alexandrinus model, and the beauty of using the triplicity lords to help understand a sign of the zodiac. Because if we just said it's only Mercury, domicile and exaltation, then we're just left with just that one planet. And when you layer the triplicity lords in, you get other archetypes that come into the Virgoan. And you'll see how it's kind of essential. So Venus is the day triplicity lord of Virgo, and the moon is the night triplicity lord of Virgo. Let's think about the moon here first. You often hear in contemporary or modern schools that Virgo is about medicine or medical or bodily. There's a bodily component. There's a medical bodily component, okay? And that's because of the moon. It's clearly about the moon ruling earth signs. We're dealing with the details of our physical body. And I would encourage you over the next 2 new moons, do you have to pay attention to something on your physical body? I've been doing a ton of that. It's required me to learn like highly detailed things about my musculature and my shoulder musculature. I'm having to like work through anatomy classes, anatomy lessons as I'm doing these new exercises that activate parts of my body that haven't been activated. But that's all Virgo. Analytics of my physical body and getting into the detail-orientative model. It's the earth element. This is my material expression, bodily. That's earth element. The moon as the ruler, body. That's another layer here. Thinking about your physical form, thinking about what you eat. I mean, it's always good to analyze this stuff. Diet is extremely important for everything we're doing. You could eat things that are affecting you or taking supplements that are affecting you in certain ways. It might be a good time to get back to ground zero and build from the ground up your dietary intake and your supplement intake. This is a great month with Virgo to think about that. Now let's just keep going because I want to go fast here. Can go on and on and on, but the Venus side of Virgo. Venus is complex in Virgo because it's also fallen there. So there's something about Venus and Virgo that's challenging for Venus. And I've always said that this is when you analyze the love and the beauty in the relationship too much, you destroy it. It's the classic art critic or food critic that's just destroying a beautiful experience. I just saw the movie Weapons. It's here in the theater. Amazing film. I couldn't believe how good it was. Just experiencing the cinema and knowing its cutting edge, unique, fresh, creative, filmic expression was enough for me to just take it in. And then I was seeing some reviews here online, and yeah, you try to break it down with the mind and you can tear it apart and you can expose the holes and you can sort of ruin it. But for me, the experience of it was a beautiful and enlivening experience. That's why I love cinema. There's nothing like going to the theater. I go less these days. The point is that you can overanalyze beauty, and that's how Venus struggles. And that might be some of the risk here of Virgo. It's actually part of the natural way that the Virgo archetype works, is that we have to put things through scrutiny. Venus and our relationships don't like it. Venus is the planet of relationships. Venus is the planet of beauty. You start scrutinizing your love relationships and your friendships. Sometimes it's not comfortable, right? You have to call people out. You have to say, that didn't work for me. You have to bring up an event that happened and say, hey, can we talk about that? Even as I hear myself saying that, I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that conversation. So that's some of the Venus in Virgo. The sign of Venus is fall, but Venus rules by day triplicity. And the other side of that is that you can't paint without a detail-orientated model. You can just throw stuff on the canvas, but I mean, there's a certain way of crafting art that requires the granularity of the materials, Virgo, earth element, and the detail-orientated approach to the paints and the brushes and all of the granular stuff to make a work of art beautiful. And so you actually enhance Venus by pulling it through the Virgo archetype. And it's the complexity of our astrological symbol set. The beauty of astrology, there's no easy answer sometimes. Sometimes there's paradoxes. There's planets that have mixed testimony. There's planets, as they experience a sign, that has a wide depth of meaning. Sometimes challenging, sometimes enlivening. So there's that side, and you might want to be thinking about that if you're a painter, writer, or an artist. You know, what are the details of your project that you're working on right now? What are the details of the marketplace of your project? And I say that in quotes, broadly speaking. Sometimes it's good to think about work we're making that can be received by an audience or that can be placed into the stream of commerce. That actually respects the work, to consider those things. And that's all Mercury. Mercury is buying and selling. So again, artists, and they think about the marketplace and it's like, oh, it's ruining the art. But again, at the same time, it helps the art live. It's like a film. I come back to cinema because getting financing is the best thing for directors, knowing the business side. That interview, I think I mentioned this in a recent video, but Sean Baker, and I forgot the other guy, but they were talking and they said the one thing that they would recommend is learn the business side of film, because that allows you to make your picture. And it can be the same in a lot of our creative endeavors, is just knowing the audience, knowing what we want to do with the project, where it's intended to go, what is the life cycle of a work of art, and thinking about those particularities can help us. And that might be a season for this. And Venus will be in Virgo. Not the point of this video, but Venus is in Virgo for that second new moon. You get the Venus in Virgo with the eclipse. Whereas the first new moon chart, Venus is in Cancer. The last thing I want to say is mutability is change. This is the seasons of change. And you see it as we prepare for school for a lot of you if you have kids, or we prepare for the fall period when the weather's going to change and we might need to think about, you know, stocking up in our homes and preparing them for the winter. And do you have the things you need? And do you have stuff for the changing of the season that is implied when you have a mutable sign? That's some of the archetype of Virgo, some of the themes I would be thinking about as we get into these two moons. I want to shift now and just talk about some of the qualitative differences in the two charts. So the first chart, as I said, has Jupiter and Venus in Cancer, sign-based sextile to the new moon. You have Mercury out from the sun's beams in Leo still, not in Virgo, and Mercury is there strong by phase. And so that is something to consider. I think this first new moon still retains some of the opportunities here of the summer and the power Mercury direct and the benefic co-presence in Cancer. So there might be more here with the new moon in Virgo as we're getting into those details around celebrating the nurturance and enjoying the gifts of life. And sometimes that's the best way to be grateful. Coming back to the idea of a gratitude practice is write it down, express it verbally or with writing. Then you're in gratitude. It's the beautiful way to express it. And I should do that more, but I want to be sure to do that during this Virgo season. The details of the benefit. Virgo new moon, sign-based sextile to Jupiter and Venus in Cancer. Lovely and wonderful. From that new moon on the 23rd of August to the eclipse on the 21st of September. So Saturn will change signs, it will re-enter Pisces. That's a huge deal in between these two new moons. So there's some sense that this first new moon is kind of the last moment to have a new injection with these new energies. All planets are still in their new signs for this first new moon in Virgo. The second one will include Saturn now going back to Pisces. And so we're getting back into some of the old worlds from March 2023 to May 2025 of Saturn. There's a lunar eclipse between these two new moons, a lunar eclipse in Pisces, which harkens back to September 2024 when there was a lunar eclipse in Pisces with Saturn. So that trigger that takes us back to some of the stories that have already been running here for about a year is a big vibe shift. And then to have the solar eclipse on the 21st of September come to inject newness, it's not pure new like I think the first new moon is. And that solar eclipse is exactly opposite Saturn. That's rough energy, guys. Saturn is just restriction. It's coming up against the wall of reality and of the true nature of the block. So we're really getting into some blocked energy by aspect in that solar eclipse chart. I'm going to be talking a lot more about this solar eclipse chart, by the way. This video isn't a full breakdown of that. In that second new moon chart, the eclipse chart, it's like the details of Virgo are having to basically be blocked. It's like you can't see the details, and instead you're having to go into the dream realm and the symbolic realm and the unarticulable realm. That's the dance of Virgo Pisces on the same axis. It tells us that the opportunities might lie here more strongly with this first new moon. If we're really trying to tap into some of those themes I talked about in the first bit of this video. The second new moon is both an eclipse, which is out of control and uncontrollable and undefinable by its nature of being an eclipse, accelerated fate, the land of the unknown where we have to surrender into the eclipse intensities. And then to have Saturn exactly opposite that eclipse in the sign of the unknown, Pisces. And Saturn is like the great sea that you go into this kind of darkness. Saturn is seafaring in the older system. It's not going to be as easy and as clear to get as technical in that chart. For both of these new moons, Mercury is not in Virgo, but in between these two new moons, Mercury enters Virgo on the 2nd of September. Mercury conjoins the Sun in Virgo on the 13th of September, and then Mercury leaves Virgo on the 18th of September before the eclipse. Both of these two new moon charts, remember, they're ruled by Mercury strongly, have no aspect with Mercury. It's an important layer here to note, which is simply that we might be dealing here over the next 6 weeks with these two new moons, having to go into a little bit of the unseen parts of our lives. 12th house, second house. If you just want to say derived houses from Virgo, the first new moon has Mercury in the 12th house in Leo. The eclipse, the second new moon, has Mercury in Libra in the second house. So there's something about the 12th and second houses here that we can pull into this contemplation, and both of them are hidden. They don't make aspects to the ascendant. One of them is about problems and challenges, Leo in this case, and then the other one is about the resources, the Libra sector. And so that's fitting with what we had talked about earlier of just getting into the details of our obstacles and our challenges, and then thinking about the resource side, the earth element. The house placement of Mercury vis-a-vis the sign of the new moons, Virgo, underscores that theme and provides another impetus to explore that theme. And the theme being, let's get into the details of our challenges and issues and our money and our planning, those uncomfortable details and conversations that Venus doesn't really like sometimes. That's a big part of the next 6 weeks or so. So everyone, that's the video. 2 new moons in Virgo, get ready for it, get your mind around it. Remember, with new moons, it's just refreshing an area of our chart. Everybody has a Virgo sign house. Getting those house topics up and saying, hey, I'm going to refresh and have some opportunities here to start anew. Two opportunities, two bites out of the apple to kick things off and start anew in our Virgo house. The second one being an eclipse means that that one might be a little bit of like the great climax comes in September. But the first one on the 23rd is, I think, a time to really try to set our intention very, very well, the 23rd of August, and really kind of work with that area. And then we kind of cast off and let the eclipse energy do what it's going to do. Again, we contemplate ahead of time to do the best we can with an astrological archetype. So great to be with you, another video, and I wish you the best for both of these two new moons and for eclipse season. You can follow my work on Patreon, SJ Anderson 144 over there, link in the description, where more videos are out regularly and live streams and weekly videos about the astrology the week ahead. So check me out there, like and subscribe here if you're so inclined, and I'll have more videos soon. Take care, everyone. Peace. Bye-bye.